Have you ever just stopped to think about how the actions of just a couple of countries in a really sensitive area like the Middle East can send ripples everywhere globally? It's like this incredibly complex chess game.
It really is, yeah. Multidimensional chess is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
You know, what looks like a very specific security move for one nation can suddenly become a huge strategic issue for others. It creates this constant tension.
Exactly, this push and pull. And that specific dynamic, that tension is what we're really going to dig into today. We're focusing on the relationship between the U.S., Israel, and Syria specifically, how it's evolving around Israeli military actions inside Syria.
Right. We want to unpack the changes, why they're happening, and importantly, what it all means for the players involved.
And for this deep dive, we're drawing heavily from a really insightful recent piece in Axios. It's titled Israel and Syria, A Divided Path, and it gives a great snapshot of these policy shifts.
It does. It lays things out pretty clearly.
So our goal here is pretty straightforward. We want to give you a clear picture of these key changes in U.S. policy towards Israeli strikes in Syria. We'll look at the why behind them and, crucially, the impact this has on everyone caught up in this, well, this geopolitical hotspot.
Sounds good. And to really get a handle on where we are now, we probably need to rewind a bit. Let's talk about the situation under the Trump administration.
Good idea. Because that really set the stage, didn't it?
It did. The policy back then regarding Israeli airstrikes in Syria was often described using that French term, carte blanche.
Carte blanche, free reign, basically.
Essentially, yes. Israel was given a lot of latitude for these strikes. The stated reason, the public justification, was about checking Iranian aggression.
Right, and deterring missile attacks against Israel itself. But that carte blanche meant more than just permission, didn't it? It signaled a very deep level of U.S. backing, almost like outsourcing part of the security job.
That's a fair way to look at it. It allowed Israel significant operational freedom. You know, lots of military activity with very little public criticism or even comment coming from the U.S. side. It definitely set a precedent.
And then the administration changes, Biden comes in. What happens initially?
Well, interestingly, for a while, not much changed on this specific issue. The Biden administration seemed to largely continue that, let's call it a hands-off approach regarding the strikes in Syria.
So no immediate reversal? Kind of a surprise, maybe?
It showed a degree of continuity, yeah. Despite the broader shifts in foreign policy rhetoric, on this front, things stayed relatively consistent for a bit.
Okay, but that continuity didn't last forever. This is where the Axios piece really highlights a shift, right? A turning point.
Exactly. We start seeing a pivot. The Biden administration began expressing concerns, that's the key word they use, concerns, about what they saw as an intensification of Israeli strikes.
Okay, so intensification and concerns. What specifically were they concerned about? Was it the number of strikes? The targets?
According to the reporting, it seems to be a mix. First, worries about strikes hitting civilian areas or areas near civilians. That's always a major concern.
Understandably.
And second, maybe even more strategically significant, the growing risk of, well, accidental escalation with Russia. And Russia has a massive military footprint in Syria.
Right. Boots on the ground, air defense systems. You don't want any miscalculations there.
Precisely. So if you look at the bigger picture, the why behind this U.S. shift seems tied to a broader desire to de-escalate regional tensions.
Especially with the war in Ukraine demanding so much global attention and resources.
Exactly. The U.S. seems keen to avoid another major flare-up in the Middle East right now. It's like trying to keep a lid on things, even if it means adjusting how they deal with allies' operations.
Which naturally leads to the question, how did Israel take this shift, this move away from that perceived carte blanche?
Well, as you might expect, not very well. The sources point to clear disappointment, even frustration, coming from Israeli officials. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been quite vocal.
And their argument is that this U.S. backing isn't just helpful, it's essential.
Yes, they see it as crucial, not just for the material support, but for the diplomatic cover it provides. It lends legitimacy to their actions against what they see as Iranian entrenchment in Syria.
So their fear is what? That without that strong, visible U.S. backing.
Their stated fear is that a less permissive U.S. stance, maybe even just the perception of one, could embolden Iran and its proxies.
Proxies like Hezbollah, other militias operating there.
Exactly. They worry it could make Iran feel less constrained, potentially leading to more weapons transfers or more direct threats closer to Israel's border. It's a genuine security concern from their perspective.
It definitely complicates their strategy. And you mentioned Russia earlier. Their role here is huge, isn't it?
Absolutely critical. Russia has a major military presence in Syria, and historically they've sort of, well, tolerated Israeli strikes up to a point.
Sure.
There seem to be deconfliction channels and understanding, perhaps.
But if the U.S. starts publicly expressing concerns or applying pressure,
That could change Russia's calculations. It's complex. Would Russia see an opening to push back more? To make Israeli operations riskier, it adds another layer of unpredictability for Israel.
it's like pulling one thread potentially unravels quite a bit.
It really is. And then you also have the humanitarian dimension. There are increasing international calls for restraint, citing reports of civilian casualties, damage to infrastructure. That adds pressure, too.
So, multiple angles converging here. Geopolitics, ally relations, humanitarian concerns, Russia's role.
Which brings us to the core point, I think.
Mm.
The U.S.-Israel relationship, specifically on the Syrian front, seems to be at a real crossroads.
A crossroads where the U.S. is trying to balance its big picture goal of regional stability, maybe even dialing things down.
While also supporting an ally's immediate and what that ally sees as essential security needs against Iran. It's a tough balancing act.
And for Israel, they now have to navigate this less predictable U.S. stance while still trying to manage that threat from Iran inside Syria. It's a tricky situation, no doubt.
Definitely. The dynamics are shifting, and the outcome is still unfolding.
So as we wrap up, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. In this incredibly interconnected world, how do close allies actually manage these situations where their priorities seem to diverge? Where one country's vital security operation potentially clashes with its partner's aim for broader de-escalation.
Yeah, that's the key question. What are the ripple effects when policies shift like this? Not just for the alliance itself, but for the whole power balance in a region as critical as the Middle East. Something to really mull over.